The Red Lotus is one of my favorite kinds of books. It's a ticking clock thriller. It's the story of Alexis Remnick, a New York City emergency room doctor who goes on a bike tour of Vietnam with her new boyfriend, and he disappears. And in his absence, she discovers that almost everything she knew about him was a lie, and she may be in spectacular amounts of danger. As part of my research into the Red Lotus, I went to Vietnam, and I decided to see the Vietnam the way I see the world best, on a bike. I went on a bike tour. And it was probably on our third day on two wheels. I was biking beside one of our guides, and I asked him, "What did your mom and dad do during the American War?" And he said, they were both Viet Cong. They worked on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. They'd build it, you'd bomb it, and they did this for 7 years. And after the war, because they knew so much about construction, they started working for a construction firm in Hanoi that has now built a lot of that city. And it might have been that very same afternoon, I was chatting with a hospital administrator from America who was also on the bike tour with us, and she said, "What's the opposite of a hospice?" And always the eager student, I instantly raised my hand and said, "A neonatal intensive care unit, a NICU." And she said, "Great answer, but wrong. The opposite of a hospice is an emergency room. In a hospice, we do all that we can to allow a person to die. In an emergency room, we do all that we can to keep a person alive." And I had my literary trifecta: Vietnam, a bike tour, and an emergency room doctor. I loved writing and researching The Flight Attendant because I loved interviewing flight attendants, this profession we interact with all the time but know very little about. An emergency room doctor is rather like that. We are all going to interact with ER doctors, but unless you've been one, you have no idea what it's like. So I loved interviewing the ER doctors, and I loved making my main character, Alexis, an ER doctor for a couple of reasons. First of all, ER doctors are spectacularly competent, and I wanted my heroine to be spectacularly competent and able to control her own destiny as the walls are starting to close in. Secondly, and here I'm actually going to quote Publishers Weekly. Publishers Weekly said about the Red Lotus, "It's hair-raising and a diabolical plot reminiscent of a Robin Cook thriller." When I was researching medicine and the medical elements of this novel, I was in heaven and scaring the heck out of myself. Some of my books are like a pond. You've got the surface, and then you've got everything beneath the surface. And very often, the surface is the plot, and that matters to me, make no mistake. But what's beneath the surface also matters greatly. So when I wanted to write a novel about the Armenian Genocide, or the systematic annihilation of 1.5 million Armenians in the Ottoman Empire, I wrote a love story. The Sandcastle Girls is fundamentally a love story, but the deeper issue, of course, is the Armenian Genocide. The Red Lotus on the surface is a ticking clock thriller, and I love that. But underneath it, it's the story of what is it like to discover that the person you love has been lying to you, and it's the story of the legacy of the Vietnam War for a couple of generations.